So we've got a big race going on for the League One playoff places, with 4 teams all capable of finishing in those playoff places come the final kick of this 2023-2024 season. It's been a mega ride for a lot of teams. There's been a lot of turbulent times for everyone involved. But we are now coming down to the final moments, and we have a big change at Barnsley with Neil Collins receiving the sack just yesterday. I did a video on that earlier on my channel, so make sure you go and check that out once you have watched this video. And let's get into looking at how Blackpool, Oxford United, Lincoln City and Barnsley could all find themselves with a potential playoff place come the final kick of the game. There's a lot going on in League One. With just one game left, it's going to be crazy to see what happens with these teams over the final day. Now, we look at the League One table and we start off with looking at the 5th place team, Barnsley. Now, obviously, they are in the worst form like you could ask for as a playoff contender, and you definitely wouldn't want to be going into the playoffs on the back of a loss or a draw. You want to be going in off the back of a win. You look at Lincoln City, they've won their previous 2 games. They are on 74 points, just 1 point behind Barnsley. You've got Oxford United also on 74 points. They've won 3 of their previous 5. And you've got Blackpool, who have found some incredible form over the past few weeks. They've won 4 in a row, back-to-back, with a draw in there as well. And they will probably see themselves as potential favourites heading into this game, with some very impressive players at Blackpool like Karamako Dembele and like the likes of Carey and Beasley. They've got some really good players in that team that can really drag them across the line. Oxford United, although probably would have hoped for a lot more with how the season started, the change from Liam Manning to Des Buckingham didn't quite go as smoothly as planned, but they find themselves with an option of the playoffs should they win on the final day. Lincoln City, obviously, how they've performed over the past six or so months has been, well, it's not even 6 months, is it? It's 4, maybe 4.5 months. Has been mega impressive. And what has happened to Barnsley? Like, I spoke about Barnsley in that video earlier on today about Neil Collins, and it's a shame what's happened to them, but ultimately that is what happens. Like, the mentality has switched for them. I don't know what happened, and they've just had some really poor form. But let's get into looking at these games. We're going to do full proper previews in just a few days' time, but we're just going to take a brief look at the games and the head-to-heads and even the squads as well for Barnsley, Lincoln, Oxford and Blackpool. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below or in this top corner. Make sure you stay tuned for all the latest League One and EFL content coming to my channel. Let me know your thoughts about who's going to get into the final playoff places on the final day down below in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on League One as a whole this season, and I'll catch you in the next part of this video. Obviously, Blackpool head to Reading. Now, Reading are obviously, they're safe in League One. Blackpool, the opportunity of the playoffs. Head-to-head looks quite kind for Blackpool. 6 wins to 5 wins to 2 draws. 4-1 back in September. Now, Blackpool, when they came to Pride Park in, I believe it was the EFL Cup, it was like the second game of the season, absolutely played us off the park. And I tell you something, I really thought at that point of the season, I was like, they're going to be right up there. But unfortunately, they've not quite been able to maintain their form. And if we do go on to Blackpool now, as we're just taking a look at this in general and click on the table, we look at the away form for Blackpool. And this is sort of where they've fell off, really. Now, ultimately, their recent form has been incredible, but they've lost 11 games away from home and they've only picked up 25 points. And you look at those other teams around them with Lincoln City, 37, and Barnsley have picked up 42, and even Oxford have picked up 34. If you then look at the home graph, you look, Blackpool have been mega impressive at home, and so have Oxford. But then you see the likes of Lincoln City and Barnsley further down the order, and it's like, this is where the problems are coming from. But you look at this Blackpool squad that Neil Critchley has put together. Like, you've got the likes of James Husband, who I think is a very good player in my opinion. You've got in the midfield, you've got Norburn, Byers, Hamilton, Karamako Dembele. They've got some really good players in this squad. Sonny Carey, someone I mentioned earlier. And then you've also got to look at the front line. Obviously, Jordan Rhodes unfortunately picked up that injury just before they played Derby a few weeks ago, and unfortunately was unable to carry on with the rest of the season. But they've still got some good options with Beasley, Lavery, Kouassi and Kyle Joseph. Like, it's not like it was the end of the world for them. And obviously, Neil Critchley, since coming back, has done a very, very impressive job, averaging 1.7 points per game, 30 wins, 11 draws, and 17 losses in just 58 matches. After what was not his best spell at Queen's Park Rangers, let's just put it that way. Obviously, he was only in charge for 12 games and he only won once and lost 6. And he's sort of returned to how he was in his previous spell at Blackpool. And I tell you what, this final day could not be in the better hands of a better person for Blackpool. Obviously, next up, we've got Oxford. Now, they face Exeter and they'll go in on high hopes. They beat them 3-0 back in September. Obviously, under different stewardship, they're now 7 wins, 3 wins to Exeter, 7 wins Oxford, 4 draws between the two. Now, it's 2 away games, and this is where this is where you're going to have the discussions for me. With the teams being at home, they're going to have a lot more, in my opinion, pressure on the shoulders from the fans to get the correct result. Obviously, with both Lincoln and Barnsley, I believe they're both playing at home. But we go and look at Oxford, and obviously, let's look at where they stand in the league table. You look at the home form, and they're 6th, 40 points, only 6 points less than current second place Derby County. Obviously, Bolton Wanderers have been mega impressive at home this season. But then we look at the away form, and they're 7th. So realistically, if they were to win this game, they deserve every right to be in that 6th place. And it's going to be very interesting to see how it's handled. Obviously, Des Buckingham came in, obviously, on the back of some really, really good performances from Liam Manning over the start of this season. And for me, I really thought Oxford United were going to be that surprise package. And don't get me wrong, yes, them being up in the playoffs, considering where they were last season, is like mega impressive. But for me, the way they started the season, I'm pretty sure there was a point, there were quite a few points clear of 3rd place, obviously early on in the season, so you've still got a long way to go. And unfortunately, they just sort of fell off towards the start of Buckingham's management, essentially. And obviously, they had that defeat at Derby around Christmas time where they were 2-0 up within 10 minutes and, 10-15 minutes, and then ended up losing with one of the final kicks of the game. I think it really just speaks about how they've done since Buckingham's came in. Obviously, 33 matches, 12 wins, 9 draws, 12 losses. He took over after leaving Mumbai City, averaging 1.4 points per game, 36% win rate. Now, I think he's done an okay job. I just think Oxford were probably expecting much, much more. In recent weeks, they have been a lot better, though, and we'll go and look at Oxford United's recent form, and you look, obviously, they've only picked up 1 point in the final 2 games, but the Stevenage game, it's one of those where it's difficult anyway. You look at the Lincoln game, they probably would have expected more, but they beat Peterborough 5-0 just 10 days ago, essentially, and obviously they've got that 5-0 loss to Bolton, which was disappointing, the 2-1 defeat to Portsmouth, the 2-1 loss, and it's sort of this spell here which sort of took them sort of back into the pack, and then this loss with Bolton. And don't get me wrong, they've had some good performances along the way, and they've got some really good players in their squad, but ultimately they're just sitting outside at the moment. And should Lincoln City do their job, then there's going to be a problem. But for me, I've got a feeling Barnsley are going to end up finishing 8th. I have a feeling. Obviously, Lincoln City at home, obviously against title winners Portsmouth. Now, if you'd have asked me this result 3-4 weeks ago, maybe, I'd have probably said Pompey will batter them. Pompey will come, they'll do the job, they'll get a 1-2-0 win, something like that. Obviously, that doesn't sound like a battering, but it's the way Pompey play. They suffocate you. They did it against Derby. Now, obviously, Portsmouth are title winners, confirmed. They're promoted, confirmed. And we saw the scenes at Fratton Park when that confirmation happened. And for me, it wouldn't surprise me if Lincoln City win this game, because ultimately Pompey are done. There's no reason for the players. Obviously, you want to win as many games as possible, but once you've won the league and there's nothing more you can achieve. So for me, you're going to have players on that Pompey team that are thinking, right, let's not get injured. Let's just do the basics, do what we need to do, come out fresh, come out fighting, come out fine, and let's see what happens elsewhere. They've not got to worry about that, really, and it's only really Lincoln that have something to play for in this game. And if we do go and take a look at Lincoln, I think they've been absolutely incredible as of recently. Now, obviously, they had that 2-1 defeat to Wigan just a few weeks ago, and you go back, and then before then, like, you just look and it's just green, 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 green. Like, we're back in February now, and like their last loss. When was their last loss before that Wigan game? It was on the 1st of January to Blackpool. Like, this 0-0 draw that Derby got at Lincoln City. Now, at the time, I thought, oh, very disappointed, especially considering if you go back like a month before, we beat them 3-1 and we're all over them, and they just seemed to turn a screw. They had that rest period essentially, and a lot just seemed to change, and they've been in some incredible form, and ultimately, if you look, they'd lost 4 in a row. There's 4 in a row there, 5 out of 6. Like, they'd been in some up and down form, and for me, they were in a position where they could either sink or swim. Now, Skubala, since coming in November of 2023, I think he's been mega impressive for Lincoln City. 14 wins, 9 draws, 7 losses. Like, that is exactly what they wanted when he came in. Obviously, didn't start off the greatest, and that's just sometimes what happens. But once he got his methods in order and they started, like, they grinded out a result against Wickham, they grinded out a result against Derby, and ultimately that Derby game, is it Joe Taylor, their forward, could have had a hat-trick. They were by far the better team in that game, in my opinion, and they should have won that game 3-4, maybe even 5-0, because we didn't really have anything going for us, and I thought they were a really good side on the day. And obviously, if we go and look at the squad, like, they do have some really good players. Obviously, Jensen, he's joined with Joe Wildsmith for clean sheets at the moment. Obviously, going into that final day, both goalkeepers are going to want to be keeping clean sheet. Obviously, if Jensen keeps a clean sheet and Wildsmith keeps a clean sheet, they'll be sharing it. Obviously, you've got in the midfield, you've got Hackett, Mandaru, you've got Sorensen, you've got some really good players here. Ethan Hamilton, who has been, I think he's played some period at right back. I could be wrong. I could be thinking about a completely different player. But obviously up front, you've got Joe Taylor, who since coming in, he started the season, I believe it was at Colchester. He started the season at Colchester, and since then he's picked up 13 goal contributions in 18 starts, and I think he's been really good. Obviously, if we do just go down to his time in League Two, obviously scored 11 goals in League Two to start off this season, which is what earned him this move. Obviously, that's 21 goals for the season for him. He at 21 years old, he moved to Luton Town, I think it was, from Peterborough, and has been absolutely incredible since leaving on loan, really. And obviously, never really quite got going at Luton Town, but he is a man who Portsmouth are going to have to keep quiet. If Lincoln end up not getting in the playoffs, it won't be down for a want of try, and that's all I have to say. Obviously, a bit similar to the Cheltenham Town situation. They're a bit sort of hindered by some poor patches throughout the season where they picked up absolutely nothing in games, and that's just one of those things. It happens in football. Let's look at the final game now, the final team, and obviously let's see how this could end up. Obviously, the final one is Barnsley at home at Oakwell. Now, they're going to want a proper turnaround. Now, with Collins being sacked, I know a lot of the Barnsley fans are happy about that decision. I spoke about it a lot in my video earlier on today, and for me, I think this could be a massive decision from the Barnsley board. Obviously, we heard in that video what the director of football had to say, what the board had to say, and for me, I'm not saying that Barnsley have made the wrong call, because ultimately their form has been absolutely terrible. Let me just get it up on the screen for you. Like, you look at their form, like, their last win was, I believe it was Burton Albion. Like, they haven't won in 5. Their last win was Burton Albion. Their last win before that was Carlisle. And then you go back to that Derby game that I was talking about earlier. They were going into that game, there was 6 points away from automatic promotion. It was either 1 or 2 games in hand. They win that game. They then go and beat Wickham. They draw with Bolton, and you think, brilliant. But this Bolton game, for me, was a real turning point. Bolton score a really late goal in the 98th minute, and it just really sort of sent Barnsley into a downward spiral, as you can see by their form after that game. Obviously, let me just get it up for you here. You see, they then lose 5-1 to Lincoln. Obviously, pick up that win against Carlisle. They draw at Cheltenham. They lose to Cambridge. They lose at Charlton. They lose at Stevenage. And then, obviously, they go on to a draw at Reading and 2 other losses. And they go into this final game with a lack of confidence. And obviously I spoke about the squad at the disposal of Neil Collins at the time, and it's not as if they've got a bad team going for them. Like, they've got some really good players throughout this list, and you can pinpoint whoever you want out of this of players you'd take at your team. But it's like someone like Adam Phillips I'd take at Derby. Herbie Kane I'd have had at Derby this season. Russell, I think, has been really good in midfield for them. Connell, I think, is quite a good player. Obviously, Benson as well. And then you look at the forward line, you look at Devante Cole. Like, look at his season, 21 goal contributions in 41 starts. Like, I'd probably argue that's probably one of his best seasons for in his career. And, like, if you go back to last season, how did Devante Cole do? 15 goals. Like, then you go to the season before in the Championship. What did he get? Just one. Like, he's had a very, very good season. And for me, I think that Barnsley have just really struggled in recent weeks. Obviously, I think they got a bit ahead of themselves after those 3 results, the draw at Bolton, and then the win with Derby and Wickham. I think they got a bit ahead of themselves thinking, oh, we're well in this fight. And then the mentality just completely shifted. Now, obviously, with Neil Collins gone, it's going to be interesting to see how they line up. Are they going to keep the 3 at the back system? Are they going to change it? Now, there's a lot of things that could happen going into this final day. I think they've just got to stick to the basics for me. Now, we've gone through all the teams that could get the playoffs. Now, I'm going to give my prediction. Ultimately, I do think Barnsley, I think they're going to fall to defeat on the final day, and I do think they're going to fall out of the playoffs. I think they're going to end up finishing in 8th position. I think the other 3 teams, I think Blackpool are going to win. I think Lincoln are going to draw, and I think Oxford are going to win. And I think we're going to end up with what's it called? I think we're going to end up with a top 6, with Oxford and Blackpool taking the final 2 places. And ultimately, I don't think any of those teams can be disappointed. Obviously, Lincoln will be very disappointed to miss out, but they'll be like encouraged by the way they turn their season around heading into next season. A big recruitment push. If they can get Joe Taylor back on loan, like, they'll be laughing starting the season, and they've got some very impressive players over there. And I am going to get up the league table, so just give me 1 second. So yeah, obviously, so for me, I think Lincoln are going to, not Lincoln, I think Blackpool are going to pick up 3 points and go to 76 and end up in 6th position. I think Oxford are going to pick up 3 points as well. They're going to end up on 77 in 5th position. And then I think it's going to be Lincoln City on 75 and Barnsley on 75, because ultimately I think Barnsley have left themselves a lot to do. Now, you can give me your opinions down in the comment section down below. Let me know who you think is going to end up in this playoff race. We will have a full League One review of the fixtures that are going on tonight, and then we'll have a League One preview for the fixtures heading into the weekend. It's going to be a big weekend of action. There's a battle for automatic promotion, a battle for the playoffs. Could even potentially be, depending on Cheltenham Town's result, a battle for relegation. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel by hitting that subscribe button down below. Like this video, share it to all your friends, and I'll catch you in the next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.